This is the news nobody saw coming. Mendeecees just got hit with the most devastating update about Yandy, and let's just say, it's got everybody on edge. Reports are saying Yandy's condition has taken a turn for the worst, and doctors have given Mendeecees some news that no husband ever wants to hear. Insiders close to the family are revealing that ICU staff pulled Mendeecees aside for a private conversation, and when he walked out, his face said it all. Tears, panic, a man completely broken. The word is her survival chances are looking grim, and at this point, it's a fight against time. Now, we've seen Yandy overcome some serious challenges in her life, but this might be her toughest battle yet. Fans are absolutely heartbroken. Celebrities are speaking out, and the entire love and hip-hop community is shaken to its core. But here's the question that's keeping everyone up at night. Will Yandy make it through this, or is Mendeecees about to face his worst nightmare? Stay locked in because we're breaking down every single shocking detail in this unfolding tragedy. The scene inside the hospital IQ is tense, suffocating, and filled with the sound of beeping monitors. Mendeecees had just been pulled into a private room by Dr. Reynolds, a senior physician with years of experience. But even he looked hesitant to say what needed to be said. The air was thick with unspoken words, and Mendeecees could feel his pulse racing. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you," Dr. Reynolds finally said, his voice low, almost like he was bracing himself for impact. "Yandy's condition, it's not looking good. We're doing everything we can, but right now, things are critical. Her body isn't responding the way we hoped." For a moment, Mendeecees just stood there, frozen in time, like his soul had left his body. His fingers clenched into fists, his jaw tightened, and a wave of emotions crashed over him all at once. Fear, panic, helplessness. No, what do you mean not responding?" His voice cracked, his throat dry like he had just swallowed glass. "Yandy is strong. She fights. She's been through worse. There's gotta be something y'all can do." Dr. Reynolds sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, a sign that he wasn't used to giving this kind of news to families. "We're doing everything, Mendeecees. But her vitals are dropping, and, well, we need to prepare for the worst." Those last words felt like a dagger straight to Mendeecees' chest. Prepare for the worst? Nah, that wasn't an option. He stormed out of the room, his mind spinning, his heart hammering against his ribs. The hallway felt cold, unfamiliar, and painfully sterile. His world had just been flipped upside down, and he had no idea how to handle it. The second he stepped out, he saw Judy Harris, his mother, pacing near the waiting area, her face wet with tears. "Mendeecees, baby, what did the doctor say?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. Instead, he just stared past her, his eyes landing on Yandy's best friend, Kisha, who sat hunched over, hands covering her face, trying to keep herself together but failing miserably. Next to her, Infinity, Yandy's daughter, looked completely lost, like her whole world was crumbling in real time. When Mendeecees finally spoke, his voice was hollow, empty. "They said it's bad, real bad." The room went silent, a thick, heavy silence that crushed the air out of the space. Judy let out a soft wail, covering her mouth, her whole body shaking. Infinity stood up so fast her chair nearly tipped over. No, she's gonna be okay. She has to be okay," Infinity cried, her voice laced with desperation. Mendeecees swallowed hard, trying to be strong, trying to hold it together for everyone, but he was drowning in fear. Then came the first wave of anger. Why didn't we catch this sooner? He turned to Kisha, his tone sharp, blaming, his emotions getting the best of him. "You were with her the other night. Did she say anything? Did she look sick? Something?" Kisha's eyes widened, fresh tears spilling over. "Mendeecees, don't do this. Don't act like this is my fault. You think if I knew she was sick, I wouldn't have done something." But Mendeecees wasn't hearing it. He was spiraling, his emotions turning to rage because that was the only way he knew how to process pain. Somebody should have noticed. Somebody should have done something. His voice echoed through the hallway, and suddenly, a nurse appeared from the ICU doors. "Mr. Harris, please, keep your voice down. There are other patients here." But Mendeecees didn't care. Not right now. Not when his whole world was hanging by a thread. Judy grabbed his arm, pulling him aside, her grip surprisingly strong despite how fragile she looked. "Listen to me, son," she whispered, her voice fierce yet full of love. "This ain't the time to be blaming nobody. Right now, we need to pray. We need to hold on. And most of all, we need to be there for Yandy, not tearing each other apart. Tears welled up in Mendeecees' eyes, but he blinked them back. I don't know what to do, meh. His voice was barely above a whisper. Judy nodded, her own tears falling freely. You love her. That's what you do. You hold on to her. You let her feel your presence. That's all you can do right now. Mendeecees took a deep breath, nodding, but just as he was about to regain control, the ICU doors flew open again, and this time it was Dr. Reynolds. His expression? Pure urgency. We need to talk. Now. And just like that, the floor beneath Mendeecees shattered all over again. What happened? Did Yandy take a turn for the worst? Was this it? His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he rushed forward, following Dr. Reynolds into the unknown. Mendeecees barely felt his feet move as he followed Dr. Reynolds down the long, sterile hallway. His pulse pounded in his ears, drowning out every other sound around him. He didn't even realize he was holding his breath until they stepped into a dimly lit consultation room. The second the door shut behind them, he exhaled shakily, his chest tightening with dread. What happened? Is she? He couldn't even finish the sentence. The thought of Yandy not making it was something his mind refused to process. Dr. Reynolds' face was unreadable for a moment before he sighed, his hands gripping the edge of the table between them. Her condition is deteriorating faster than we expected, the doctor admitted, his tone laced with something Mendeecees hadn't heard before, concern mixed with urgency. Mendeecees' stomach dropped. Faster than expected? What did that even mean? So what are you saying? That she's running out of time? His voice cracked at the edges, and he hated how weak he sounded. Dr. Reynolds hesitated before nodding. I won't sugarcoat this, Mendeecees. We're in a race against time right now. Her organs are shutting down. Her heart is struggling. If we don't see improvement soon, we'll have to make some very difficult decisions. Mendeecees staggered back, gripping the wall for support. His entire body felt numb. Difficult decisions? Nah, man, we ain't doing this. We ain't talking like this. You're supposed to be saving her. His voice rose with panic, but Dr. Reynolds didn't flinch. We're doing everything in our power, but we need you to be prepared. Prepared? How the hell was he supposed to prepare for losing Yandy? The woman who had been his rock, his partner, the mother of his kids? He shook his head, his vision blurring with tears he refused to let fall. No, I don't accept that. There's gotta be another option. Something else y'all can do. Ain't no way I'm letting her go like this. Dr. Reynolds hesitated for a moment before glancing at the file in his hands. There might be one option. Mendeecees' heart skipped a beat. What? What is it? Dr. Reynolds took a deep breath. A high-risk procedure, one that could potentially stabilize her long enough for her body to start recovering. But he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. It's not guaranteed, and if it goes wrong, I don't care about the risks. If there's a chance she can make it, we're doing it. Mendeecees cut him off before he could even finish. The doctor studied him for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I'll talk to the surgical team. Mendeecees rushed out of the consultation room, his mind reeling. He needed to tell the family what was happening. As soon as he stepped back into the waiting area, all eyes were on him. Judy jumped up. What is it? What's happening? Kisha's face was still stained with tears. Infinity was clutching her phone like she was waiting for a miracle, and even the other visitors in the room could sense the intensity in the air. They're gonna try a procedure, Mendeecees announced, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. It's risky, but it might be her best shot. Infinity's breath hitched. Risky how? Like, she might not make it? Mendeecees clenched his jaw. We don't focus on that part. We focus on the fact that she's a fighter and she's gonna pull through. For a second, the room was silent. Then, Kisha let out a shaky breath. Then we pray. Judy nodded, and we stay strong. For Yandy. Mendeecees nodded, his mind made up. No matter what, he wasn't losing her. Inside the ICU, Yandy was barely hanging on. The machines beeped softly around her, her body motionless, her skin unnaturally pale. Nurses moved quickly, preparing the room for the upcoming procedure, but the tension in the air was suffocating. As Mendeecees stood by the glass window, watching, his thoughts drifted to every moment they had shared together. Their wedding, their fights, their love, their family. Baby, you better not leave me. You hear me? He whispered under his breath, his fingers curling into fists. Just then, the doors swung open and a nurse gestured for him to come in. You can see her before we begin, she said softly. Mendeecees didn't hesitate. He rushed to her bedside, his hands shaking as he grabbed hers. Yandy, I need you to wake up. Nah, I need you to fight. His voice was raw with emotion. You ain't leaving me. You hear me? I can't do this without you. Her fingers barely twitched, but that was enough to send a fresh wave of hope crashing through him. That's it, baby. I know you hear me. He squeezed her hand tighter. We got too much left to do. Too much life left to live. You ain't going nowhere. The medical team started moving in, preparing for the procedure, but Mendeecees stayed right where he was. Then, a loud, blaring alarm rang out from the monitors. Something was wrong, very wrong. The nurses scrambled, the doctors rushed in, and before Mendeecees could process what was happening, someone grabbed him and pulled him back. Mr. Harris, we need you to step outside. No, what's happening? What's wrong with her? Mendeecees shouted, his voice filled with terror. But the only answer he got was the sight of Yandy's body suddenly convulsing as doctors shouted orders over the chaos. And just like that, the nightmare deepened. The hospital halls were filled with an eerie silence, the kind that made Mendeecees' stomach twist in knots. He sat in the waiting area, his head buried in his hands, his mind racing with thoughts he couldn't control. This wasn't supposed to happen. Yandy was supposed to be fine. She was supposed to walk out of this hospital with him, laughing and rolling her eyes at how overprotective he was. But instead, she was lying in that ICU bed, fighting for her life. His body felt numb. He had faced a lot in his life: prison, street battles, betrayals, but nothing had ever made him feel this powerless. Every part of him wanted to storm into that ICU, grab Yandy's hand, and beg her to stay with him. She's going to make it, he muttered under his breath, as if saying it out loud would make it true. The doors to the ICU suddenly swung open, and Dr. Ramirez stepped out, his face unreadable. Mendeecees immediately jumped to his feet. Tell me she's okay, he pleaded, his voice cracking. Dr. Ramirez exhaled slowly. She's stable for now, but it's touch and go. Her vitals are weak. We're doing everything we can, but you need to prepare yourself. Prepare himself? What was that supposed to mean? Was he supposed to prepare to say goodbye? No. He refused to accept that. Can I see her? His voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Ramirez hesitated. Only for a moment. She's unconscious, and we need to keep her stable. Mendeecees didn't wait for another word. He pushed past the doctor and rushed inside. The sight of Yandy nearly broke him. She looked so small, so fragile, connected to machines that beeped rhythmically, keeping her alive. He swallowed back the lump in his throat as he reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly. Baby, I need you to wake up, he whispered. I need you to fight, Yandy. You hear me? You can't leave me. You can't do this to me, to the kids. His voice cracked. His tears fell freely, soaking into the white hospital sheets. He didn't care who saw him like this. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door made him turn. Kimbella and Remy Ma stood there, their faces pale with worry. Mendeecees. Kimbella started, her voice hesitant. We just heard. We came as soon as we could. Mendeecees nodded, but he couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his emotions too raw. Rennie stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. She's a fighter, Mendeecees. Yandy is strong. She's gonna pull through. But Mendeecees wasn't so sure. He turned back to Yandy, brushing a stray curl from her face. She better, or I don't know what I'll do. Outside the hospital, news of Yandy's condition had spread like wildfire. Social media was in chaos. Yandy Smith in critical condition. Prayers up, one fan tweeted. Another wrote, I'm literally crying. Mendeecees does not deserve this. The hashtag #PrayForYandy was trending worldwide. Paparazzi swarmed the hospital entrance, flashing cameras as Yandy's family arrived one by one. The energy was tense, desperate. Inside, Mendeecees refused to leave Yandy's side. Hours passed, but she didn't wake up. Nurses came in and out, checking her vitals, adjusting machines, but still, nothing. The weight of it all was suffocating. And then, alarms started blaring. Mendeecees' heart stopped. Doctors rushed in, shouting orders. She's coding. A nurse yelled. Mendeecees was pushed aside as they worked frantically. Get the crash cart. No, 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 Mendeecees muttered, watching in horror. A doctor grabbed the defibrillator. Charging to 200. Clear. A shock jolted Yandy's body, but the monitor remained flat. No response. Mendeecees felt himself sinking. This couldn't be happening. Again, another shock. Nothing. Tears blurred his vision. Come on, baby, fight. One more shock. A long beep, then a faint blip. The monitor flickered. She's got a pulse, a nurse shouted. Mendeecees collapsed into a chair, sobbing in relief. She wasn't gone. She was still fighting, but for how long? Was this a miracle or just borrowed time? The room fell silent, everyone watching the steady beeps of the monitor. No one had an answer. Would Yandy wake up? Would she survive? Only time would tell. Y'all, this is just heartbreaking. Mendeecees is barely holding on, and Yandy's fate is still uncertain. After everything they've been through, this might be their toughest battle yet. Will Yandy wake up? Will she pull through and reunite with her family, or is this the moment that changes everything forever? We need to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Yandy will fight her way back? And how do you think Mendeecees will handle this if the worst happens? Also, make sure you hit that like button if you're praying for Yandy's recovery, and SUBSCRIBE for the latest updates on this emotional roller coaster. Turn on those notifications so you don't miss what happens next, because trust me, you won't want to miss this. We'll be keeping a close eye on this story, so stay tuned. Until then, let's all send love and prayers to Yandy and her family. See you in the next one.